Jason Keys. I am the maintainer of Neovim, which just means that I do the boring work that no one else wants to do, and I also unblock the people that are doing the real valuable work, real valuable coding work. I have a significant amount of commits to the project, but the really cool features are mostly worked on by other people, and I try to give them the opportunity to do that. I don't have a slide on the history of Neovim, but I'll just mention briefly that it was started in 2014, forked from Vim 1.4.200, something like that. We've merged over 1,000 Vim patches. I'll go into that more briefly. So it's based on Vim by Bram Molinar, and still, in the intro, we still have his name there because he's still done most of the work. I don't know if he wants his name there, though. Maybe we should ask him about that today, though. And I'm nobody. That's a feature. That is a feature. I'm not a hero, and I can be replaced. And I am working actively to make myself replaceable and documenting the role of the maintainer. Not all PRs go through me. I don't review every single thing. I've reviewed thousands of PRs, but they don't all go through me. There are other people who are very comfortable with certain areas of the code base that I haven't even looked at some things that they've committed, and I'm totally fine with that because they know it better than I do, and I have a lot of trust in them, and that trust builds up over time to the point where you know that something that somebody worked on is so high quality that you feel completely at ease with it going into the code base. I have good enough number of years of software development experience. I have 5 years of serious Vim usage, maybe 15 years of casual usage, but 5 years ago I sort of took an unhealthy turn into my interest in Vim. My personal goals for Neovim are, these are just my personal goals, and I still try to facilitate other goals of the project, but my personal interest in the project has been, since 3 years ago, how do I get this thing in an IDE so that I don't have to choose between Vim and an IDE? There's these really nice tools out there that other people can use. Why can't I compose Vim with this tool? Why do I have to choose between one or the other? And why can't Vim be a fluid thing that exists everywhere? And I think it can be. And in fact, if you look at help design not in Vim itself, it mentions, this is Vim, this is not Neovim, right? So it mentions in this description of what Vim is not, it mentions as an aside that you should use Vim as a component in a shell or an IDE. And in fact, Bram Molinar started a project that not too many people know about. I've never even heard of anybody using this, but it's still apparently maintained. It's called AGIDE. And the website is still up if you want to visit it. its purpose is to some degree, achieve that goal of making Vim a component in a suite of tools. And so the goal of Neovim is it comports with that little known goal of Vim. And also I'm really interested in removing friction so that no one ever has to encounter and understand the edge cases and the quirks that I don't think are necessary for getting started with Vim and just for using Vim in day-to-day uses. Changing the subject from me to the other contributors, you'll notice in the Vim intro, Vim is by Bram Molinart and et al. Et-L-E. I like to call Neovim contributors part of the et-L-E. We have 262 different contributors in the last 2 years, 6,479 new commits. That's from commit zero. Commit zero was we discarded the Vim history for better or worse. I mean, it was a controversial decision, but it's too late now to do anything about it. So we started from 0 commits, or 1 commit, and we've had 6,479 commits since January 2014. In the last 12 years, Vim's had 6,500 commits, which is not directly apples to apples because the development process is different for Vim, but it's an interesting comparison to me anyways. But in the last 2 years there have been, it's hard to tell, but there's been about 323 different contributors to Vim, depending on how you do your calculations in the last 3 years. So 300 versus like 200, take that for what it's worth. And we have 13 people on the core team. They all have the commit bit. They can commit directly to master. Has anything ever gone wrong with that? No. People do the right thing after they develop the reputation long enough. They work on the project long enough that they get the commit bit, and by then you can use your judgment to figure out whether they have the discipline and common sense not to do anything stupid, and nobody has ever done anything stupid. It's not like some projects, I can't remember the names, but there's some projects where you have, maybe like Bitcoin, I think it has had, occasionally they have like contributors that many different people have a commit bit, and they're making like hostile commits that other people don't want them to do, but that hasn't happened with Neovim. Everyone just behaves. So I briefly mentioned my role is primarily to unblock people, so that PRs, changes, ideas, they don't languish, they don't, and I try to have an overarching knowledge of everything that's going on, so that I can prioritize things, figure out what's important, or figure out things that could be done easily. This person wants to do this one thing. If I just took out this one little thing that's blocking their progress because maybe it's something that they aren't familiar with, and so constantly having to hop around between those scenarios. I also try to automate things and babysit the build system, again, for this purpose. And I also try to pay attention and be mindful of the user interface, where a user is a developer, a plugin author, and even end user. I don't just consider end users are not the only types of users. There's other types of users. Contributors are users. plugin authors are users, but they're using a different level of interface. But that interface that they're using is really important. It's really important that it's consistent, that it has what Fred Brooks called conceptual integrity in Mythical Man Month, if you're a fan of that book. Trying to have like a semblance of a system that that is intuitive to the person using it. So, instead of just slapdash adding hundreds of API functions that do this or that and maybe don't work together or are redundant or don't follow a pattern, I shamelessly spend time bike shedding and making sure that the details matter, naming conventions are followed, and things like that, things that people may come up. And administration, write code. Things that I like about Vim personally, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, it's a really important feature, and that's one of the main reasons for Neovim to exist. And think about it like this. There are so many Vim-like text editors that have been written over the years. And there's more being written today. I mean, there's new ones coming out. People come out with their own project. But you can't, if you start using that editor, you are now buying into that ecosystem. And you're leaving behind the Vim ecosystem. Your plugins won't work. Things are going to work slightly differently as far as key bindings go. When you go on a server and Vim 7.3 is on that server, you're going to be sort of uncomfortable. So the idea with Neovim, at least for me personally, and I think a lot of people, is that we want to extend Vim, but we don't want to lose that ecosystem. We don't want to lose the plugin ecosystem. We don't want to lose the habits that we've developed. And, people try to make improvements to the Vim text editing model, and there are improvements that could be made if you started from scratch, and people have done that with Viz from the Suckless project, or Cocoon, if you've ever heard of that project. They sort of like changed the editing model into like a perfected editing model. That's great, but at the end of the day, the changes that were made there aren't significant enough. The editing model is good enough, and it's not worth starting from scratch, because the changes end up being just kind of arbitrary. Like, yeah, it's weird that CE, the CE command doesn't change to, it works just like CW. That seems weird, but at the end of the day, it's not worth starting from scratch. The conventions also, there's a lot of accidental conventions that have fallen out of Vim over the years. I mean, they're accidental in the sense that, Bram intentionally designed them, but the quick fix buffer started out as just, that was only for showing errors, but then it became, and you can see even from its awkward name, it's now a generalized facility for navigating arbitrary lists. And so it was an accidental convention that came about, but it's really useful. And make alternative, the concept of alternative objects and lots of other things. And the culture of the Vim ecosystem is another thing that it's in some sense an accident. There's a culture for Vim plugin authors of maintaining backwards compatibility that I don't think exists in any other extensible text editor. Even in Emacs, if you're into Emacs, you'll find that the vast majority of plugins only work with the latest, or maybe the most previous point release of Emacs. They will throw out compatibility with things that are 5 years old. As soon as there's a new feature in Emacs, they'll just throw it out. Whereas in Vim, there's a tendency for plugin authors to insist on being compatible all the way back to Vim 7.3 and sometimes even 7.2. And that is valuable. And it ends up not being really that costly either. But that's accidental in the sense that the reason that they're doing that is because Vim changes kind of slowly. For a long time, the plugin authors are used to building in sometimes really insane workarounds to fill in missing features. All of that has been changing rapidly with the recent Vim 8 activity. And also, of course, it's a relatively big community. It has tons of plugins. As soon as you move to a quote-unquote better version of Vim like Cocoon or Viz, you will find yourself missing Fugitive, which is a very valuable plugin, and many other plugins that you just sort of take for granted. And those are plugins that all have to be rewritten for all these fancy new text editors. So even though ubiquity is one of the strongest things about Vim, I think that it can be improved, going back to what I said about making it a common component that you take for granted that can exist in IDEs. It could exist in any random text field in your OS. I mean, let's get crazy. So I think that could you could be even more ubiquitous. And Vim, I think we could do a better job of embracing Vim's idioms. For example, like Vim now ships with logicpat.vim, which is a plugin that it tries to make Vim regex. It gives users a way of, it gives a new language that wraps Vim regex so that users don't have to learn Vim regex. Instead of doing that, I think we should just make Vim regex better. I mean, I say that, and I know it's not easy to do, and I'm not planning on sending a pull request for it anytime soon. But it's a thought experiment, anyways. And I think logicpat.vim also, it's diverting users away from learning Vim regex. I think the Vim regex is a key feature of Vim that we should embrace. That's just an example. The community, like I said before, is somewhat accidental, but maybe there's a more intentional approach that can be taken so that we're actively trying to grow the community. And the reason for that is that bigger communities have tangible value even to veteran users of a platform. The more users that you have, the more robust your platform is going to be, because they're going to find random edge cases that maybe you didn't run into or didn't have time to debug. There's obviously going to be more plugins, and there's obviously going to be more devs, and that benefits everyone, even if you. What I'm addressing when I list these things is, you'll find people who say that they don't care that their editor isn't popular, and that's a very common sentiment in Emacs, is that it works for me and I don't care who else is using it. But the bottom line is, you should care who else is using it, because they're helping you indirectly and even directly. Better defaults. There's lots of small changes that, not lots, but there's several key small changes that can be made that will piss off a very small fraction of users that I'm okay with pissing off, and they can continue to use Vim 7.3 if it's not going away. So why not fix things permanently for everyone else forever? Yeah, so ugly code, Neovim is, I think, there's a lot of talk about how we just want to make the code pretty, but that's not really a primary concern. That's more like an incidental concern, and I'll go into that more later. Here's what I think of. Here's how I think of the Vi evolution, and if anyone knows better, please correct me. So Ed introduced a line addressable editing language, the thing that we use, X commands, T, M, and anytime the address syntax that's supported by most but not all commands, which is another thing where consistency comes out there. Vi, the most significant thing Vi introduced was normal mode. Vim, I think of Vim's major contributions as text objects and eval. Viml didn't exist in Vi. It's a feature that was introduced with Vim. And the most important contribution that Neovim can make is by exploding extensibility, and the way that it can do that is by being embeddable and by having a first-class API. The API in Neovim is now becoming very mature, and it's the momentum there is gathering after 2 years of a lot of work. And in fact, it's even accessible now